Hey guys, welcome back. It's an exciting day here at Bog Life. We got everything ready to go. We are ready to plant the garden. Now the fence isn't up, but that'll be in a future video. We'll take care of that later, but we have to get everything in the ground. The plants are starting to get a little stressed out, so we want to get them in the ground, get them water so they have room to grow. Now, a lot of this stuff we started from seed over the winter, so it's ready to go in the ground. It's got some good height. It's got some good roots in it, so we should be ready. Now, we did pick a few other things up from Steins, the things that were kind of missing to fill in the gaps of some of the vegetables we wanted to grow. Now, the last thing we are going to do also is some direct sow. We do have some beans, some squash, some cantaloupe, some watermelon, parsnips, carrots, and I believe radishes. They're going to be direct sown, scattered within the garden as well. We have an excessive amount of cucumbers, an excessive amount of eggplants and tomatoes. So we're going to get everything in. We hopefully will have a fantastic harvest later this summer, and we have a lot of work. So buckle up. This is going to be a long one. So let's get started. Tomato, vegetable, and herb fertilizer by Dr. Earth Homegrown. It's an organic and natural handcrafted blend. First thing over here are our evergreen bunching onions. And the nice thing is, because of how soft the soil is, because we just planted it, it's going to go in really nicely. Now this is where things really start to get interesting, because most of this was labeled, but a lot of it turned out to become unlabeled, if you will. So what I'm going to end up doing is kind of arranging it so we have some pepper plants here. I have a bunch of cucumbers that I'm going to scatter throughout to just kind of travel up the trellis, and then some peppers there in the front. I'm not sure what type of peppers they are. I believe these are cayennes, but I guess we're gonna find out. So I'm gonna get these in, and then back behind it, we've got our collards. I got 4 of these I'm gonna plant in this area. Over here, I'm gonna be planting cantaloupe. I'm gonna line this whole area with cantaloupe that as it grows, it's gonna spill over the edge, and then I'm gonna allow it to kind of encase this entire area of stone with the leaves and the growth. And that gives it a lot of room for growth, a lot of room to spill over, so I don't have to worry about it. I can still maneuver and walk around. We'll have a fence up, so it won't be an issue, and it won't take over valuable space in the bed. Everything started to overheat, so I went ahead and got it in the ground as quickly as I could. Over here, I've got our Brussels sprouts. I got 4 of those here. And then I've got my broccoli and then my collards. And right along here, I have leeks. And then we followed around with our cucumbers and some of our peppers, and then all of our cantaloupe on the side there. So this bed is done, but I'm going to fill in all the gaps and spacing with radishes. All right, so we got an interesting bed over here. First, we start out with our eggplant. We got a couple rows of eggplant here. They're going to get about 30 inches tall. They're not going to block anything out over here. And if they need anything, we'll stake them in the ground. Then we move on. We've got some tomatoes back here. These are going to be our cherry falls, so they're going to kind of tip over the back of the bed, but it's not really going to affect the way they grow. And then the rest of this is going to be our early fortune cucumbers surrounded by this trellis, and the rest of this surrounding the trellis and intermixed here are all going to be small sweet peppers. Now in the extra space here, I'm planting spinach. Now, almost this entire section is going to be tomatoes. We've got a variety of different types. We've got some Celebration hybrid tomatoes. We've got some Sweet 100s, and we might even have a few Cherry Falls kind of intermixed into here. So what we're going to be doing is we ran a trellis right down the center, which we'll reinforce later. We'll allow these to grow up, and we'll kind of train them to stick along here. And we'll basically make it so the growth is on the outside, and that's where we're going to do our harvesting. Now, what's nice about this is what we plan on doing is in this area, we're also going to be planting some sugar peas. I'm going to run a trellis, which is going to be a cattle panel. It's going to start from here and go to the next bed. And it's going to have an arch right through here. And in that, we're going to have peas and green beans growing. And then in the corners, to kind of just balance it out, to fill up the space the best that we can, we have more of the eggplant that we've had over there. We're filling in over here with the rest of it. Those get to be about 30 inches tall and should be pretty standalone right here on the corners without really affecting anything else. So we'll get all of this planted in.
Now we want our tomatoes to have a very strong root base, and we want them to have a very strong stem. The first thing you have to do is protect them from disease. So
to make sure you clip off the bottom portion of your tomatoes, anything that's going to be dragging onto the ground or touching, and you want to bury about 1/3 of it underground just to give it a strong root base, because all of these little fibers will eventually turn into roots. So we'll fertilize it. You'll see I dug in pretty deep, and what we'll do is we'll plant this about 1/3, almost half of the stem, and train it to start to head towards our trellis. And we'll do that for each one of these. Now on this side, we're going to be putting our sugar snap peas. We're going to plant those right along here, so when we do put in that trellis, it's going to go right up over the top. Now on the other side of that trellis, we have the same green beans that we put in Griffin's garden. That's going to be a Bush Lake garden bean. These are going to be climbers. They are going to move up. And then just beyond that, we have a big Kahuna garden bean. These are going to be more of a compact green bean. So those are going to be right out here, while this one's going to be tracing up the top of the vines, or up the trellis. Now we've got our kale and some cabbage. So we're going to put our kale through here, the cabbage. We do have a few, looks like habaneros coming up, so we're going to get that in the ground. Hopefully that'll do well. And then the rest of this area is all going to be carrots and parsnip. Now before we get the carrots started, I'm going to try starting some watermelon right here on the end. Just like the cantaloupe, I'm going to give this a lot of room to spill over, but I'm going to try to start a bunch of these right here and see if any of them take, and see if we can get any fruit out of it. All right, so what we're going to do is some rows. So we're going to start with our parsnips. So we're going to do a kaleidoscope on the outside. We're going to do a parsnip in the center, and then we're going to do our Nante's cordless heirloom variety on the inside. So I'm going to do probably 2 or 3 rows right here, and I'm just going to do
a couple of trenches.
So these get a little bit bigger, the parsnip get a little bigger, so we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to space them a little bit more. We're only going to do 2 rows here. And lastly, it's gonna be carrots. A little bit shorter because we do have our habaneros right here. So what we're gonna do is our last row is right there. So they'll be a little bit shorter, but we're gonna plant probably 4 or 5. Now this is going to be more of a tomato and herb and some random peppers of kind of whatever I had left over. I was able to start some seed. I did pick up a couple of basil plants that we're going to plant up here, and an heirloom tomato called an indigo rose. But to go along with that, I started from seed earlier and it didn't quite work out the way I wanted to, but I picked up some basil. And I restarted some basil, and I've got this black basil, an opal basil that I'm going to try to plant in here. It seems to be doing pretty well. I don't really want to pick them apart and thin them quite yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plant the entire thing just like this directly in here and hope that as it grows, it'll strengthen and maybe we'll be able to thin them later. Same thing with this opal. Actually, we'll space it, do it over here, because I do have some sweet basil as well that we're going to put in. These are I gotta be very gentle with these, okay? No. So Dad is planting those. And then our regular basil goes right here.
So I can be gentle with
You can be gentle? I don't know if you know how to be gentle, buddy. Okay, so we got 3 basils here, and we'll get our other basils right here in the ground. These are pretty established now. These are a sweet basil.
Pull that out.
Here, take it. Put it in the hole. Okay, now cover it up. Cover up the soil. Perfect. Perfect. We're going to be planting this one.
What?
Indigo rose. Pretty excited about this one. Black outside with a red center. So we're going to plant it right in the middle here. Give it a lot of space. Don't want anything near it, and see how big we can get this guy to grow. Now these we will be thinning. These are our cherry falls. We're going to plant these right along the side here because we're going to expect them to kind of spill over. So see what I'm working with and break them apart. We got about 7 of them here. So we're going to plant them and just kind of spread them out along here the best that we can. One. This is a big Jim pepper. Big Jim. This one is a California Wonder Pepper.
Ooh, I like those ones. Because of the sweetness.
That's right. Good job.
It's not talking about an animal being a big daddy.
No, we don't want that to happen. All right, bud. Guess what?
What?
It's done. Now, the last thing I actually forgot to show you is right over here. I actually planted some summer squash right in this area, and then some delicata squash here. These are going to be vine growers. Same thing we're going to do on the other side with the trellis. It's going to arch over. We're going to allow those vines to grow up over the trellis and create a canopy. And we're going to copy that and mimic that on this side with a zucchini and another summer squash. Everything's planted. I have to keep track of everything I've done. So I have this. Now what I've done is this is actually a wet erase marker. So I have this laminated. This is a map of the garden. I have everything labeled on what I have growing where. As I change things or as I harvest things out and replace it with other things, I can just easily scratch it off and write something in new. right, guys, so that's it. Everything is in. This has been a year in the making. We've been working on this all the way from laying down the gravel, building the beds, getting everything situated, getting everything filled, and we finally got all the plants in. And it's off to a good start. Hopefully everything will start taking off. We are about 3 weeks behind what I really anticipated us putting everything in the ground at, but I think it'll be all right. We did top it all off with a little bit of repel all from Bonide right around the perimeter of each one of the beds, hopefully deter any of the animals from kind of getting in there. And with that in mind, we will be building a fence, a perimeter fence around the entire thing. That will be coming up in a future video. Hopefully we'll be working on that in the next week or so and get that all done. So stay tuned for that. If you have any questions about what I planted or any of the ways I organize things, please leave them down in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.